Pasi, when the PISA test results came out last year, there was consternation in our country that we'd fallen in the rankings. How was it in Finland when the rankings went down? What was the reaction? What should we make of that?
You know, Finland has never really been too excited about the PISA results, not in the good days and not in the bad times, because we don't think education as a global competition. When the results were published in last December, we already had a lot of domestic data and research indicating what are the kind of trends within our school system, and there was a kind of expectation that our results will not be as they used to be, for two reasons. One is that there's something probably happening among our boys in Finland, that the school system is not able to attract the boys to study math and reading and science as they used to. But then the other one, and probably the more important one, is that there are so many other countries around the world that are just basically driving their school policies and school improvement and almost everything they do in order to improve their PISA results. And since the PISA is a kind of a statistical game, if some countries do better, improve a lot, then some has to lose, and that's why Finland has been we have been on the losing side, because we have not really paid any attention to getting better in the PISA league tables.
So what should you pay attention to? What are you paying attention to in Finland?
You know, Finland is a country or society, a nation, where equality and equity are really the kind of a key values. And it's a kind of a interesting thing that it goes across most of the society. Most of the people think that what really matters in education and in life in general is that everybody has a share of good life. And regularly, if you ask Finnish people that what are they most concerned of, the environment is not the kind of a main concern, or war, or anything like this. Most people say that they are afraid of increasing inequality in the country. And this probably explains a little bit also why so many Finnish people think that the most important thing in our education system, the school system, is that we can maintain and enhance the equity and equality in a way that the school system should provide same equal opportunities for everybody to be successful.
You see, that I would say is a core New Zealand value. And we have this idea of the fair go, that everybody
Right.
should get a fair go.
Right.
But not every child is getting a fair go in New Zealand. It isn't an equitable system. How do you do it? How do you ensure that every child gets to realise their potential?
Yeah, first of all, I think internationally there's a big gap between the people speaking about equity and saying that it's important and then really doing it. And I think that Finland is one of those countries where we really do take these things very seriously. For example, how the schools are resourced, that we are very careful in making sure that the schools where we have more immigrant children or more children coming from poorer families, that they have more resources in terms of smaller class sizes and assistant teachers and other resources that they can use for that. But I think the critical difference between, for example, New Zealand and Finland in this way is that we have a different philosophy in special needs education, how we are helping and dealing with those children who have more needs and who require more help than the others. And I think that's a kind of a critical thing, that it's not only about having a special education system in a place or having a policy that will help those who are in need, but how to do it. That's a kind of a critical thing. And I think that the beauty of Finnish system is that we are intervening very, very early on, much earlier than any other system in the world, in order to make sure that these individuals will be helped on day one when there is a kind of a need.
How early? Is it preschool, or what? How early are you intervening?
Well, this basically begins already in the family when the kids are very, very small and young and still with the parents. We have a system like you probably also have, that every child must go through a kind of a healthcare and developmental checks regularly before they go to school. Kids go to school in Finland when they're 7. And every child, before they start the school, they have already done several of these kind of a comprehensive medical and developmental checks. So when the child enters the school at the age of 7, the school already knows that what has been the past and kind of growth of this individual. If there are any issues there, they can start to help immediately.
Our children start at 5. What happens to your children before the age of 7?
They play 2 more years, and I think that that's a kind of a very essential thing in Finland. And there are very few people actually in my country right now who would be in favor of starting schooling, formal schooling, earlier than age 7. So that's why, because we think that play is a kind of a fundamental tool for children and people to realize that they have imagination and kind of cultivate and develop that increasingly important area of our lives.
Because this is one of the areas that I wanted to talk with you about, is creativity. We live in the creative age.
Absolutely.
I'm making my living by talking with you,
Right.
while builders are fixing my house back in New Zealand, you know. Is this part of building creativity? What is the thinking behind here? What is the thrust of Finnish education?
I think that we, just like New Zealand, we are both nations, and we depend on creativity right now, and this will only get kind of worse in the sense that the traditional knowledge and skills will lose their value, and to be creative will be the kind of a capital of the nations and individuals. I think how we think about this in Finland is it's a very simple way of thinking. First of all, that there needs to be kind of a certain sense of safety or a fearless environment in schools and in society, so that people can take risks. Because without trying things and taking risks, you cannot really enter the kind of the area where your curiosity is. And if you don't take risk, if you're not curious about things, then there will be no creativity. And if there's no creativity, there's no innovation. So that's why I think for the Finns, the fundamental thing is that we need to have a school where everybody feels safe, that they don't feel that we will be punished if we make a mistake. The Finnish schools, in a way, they kind of celebrate failure. So if you make a huge kind of a failure after trying hard to do something, it's a worth of celebration rather than punishing things. So it's a kind of a cultural thing also, and I think the Finnish teachers and schools have been fairly good in transforming this culture that we used to have, that was very much based on being able to give the right answer at the right time in the right place, and then you were rewarded. But not anymore. Now it's more about the teachers are expecting that the children try things, and they can. That's why the play is so important, that they can kind of create these skills. So creativity and innovation are extremely important qualities right now.
How do you measure that?
How do we measure that? Well, there's actually a kind of a movement or project initiative within European Union of it's called Measuring Creativity. And I think people are saying that you cannot really measure creativity directly, but you can measure some of these factors and features that will lead to creativity, kind of a feed into creativity. And I don't know if we needed that type of kind of exact measurement or comparison or ranking of countries in terms of how creative their school systems are. But I think that we need some type of indication of whether the conditions for creativity are there. And those are how safe people feel there, how much room they have to take risks, try things, experiment, how much opportunities they have to work together in small teams. And if these conditions are missing, then it's very likely that there will be no creativity.
Because I asked the question because taxpayers want to know whether they're getting value for money.
Right.
And if you can say to them, look, we took these tests and we did really well, so we must be doing all right. But you can't measure creativity in the same way. You can't measure happiness at school in the same way, can you?
Yeah, no, but I think what we need to do in the future, and actually right now, is to also educate our parents more. And if we always rely on what the parents have been expecting earlier, and these expectations are very much inherited from generation to generation, I think this road forward from here in education will be very difficult. I think we need to pay more attention to also, including parents into this conversation and say that, wait a minute, everybody understands that, for example, the creativity is very important for every individual, but that's something that we simply cannot measure. The school cannot tell you that how creative your son or daughter is. That this is something that we have to, trust the school and, see what the school is doing rather than, how well the individuals are performing.
So you used a very interesting word there, trust. In New Zealand at the moment, the word is accountability. How do we make teachers accountable? Maybe we should trust them.
Yeah, I often speak about the And I think that New Zealand is actually in a business of test-based accountability. But a lot of this accountability is related to standardized assessments and tests. And then the alternative term that Finland has been employing and developing is a trust-based responsibility. And I always keep these two words together, the tests and accountability, because they belong to kind of a same regime, and then trust and responsibility. And it's very unfortunate, actually, that in English language, accountability has taken the role of responsibility. And in my work, I often define, people ask me that, so how do you define accountability in education in Finnish context? And I often say that accountability is something that is left when responsibility is taken away. Yes. And I think it tells a lot about what has happened now in this kind of an era of accountability, when people feel that the teachers that should be held accountable and schools, and what's happening at the same time when this accountability gets stronger. That's what I've seen. Yes. In New Zealand and many other places. Then the responsibility within the school which is getting lesser, and particularly the responsibility that the children should have over their own learning and development. And that's a kind of a big mistake or damage that is happening in many countries, that the children are not any more responsible because teachers are held accountable.
There's a lot of talk in New Zealand about making teachers accountable. How do you make teachers accountable in Finland?
Well, in Finland we actually don't have a word accountability in education. It's a kind of a commercial term coming from accounting, and when we speak about accountability, that is accountability here in New Zealand, we actually speak about responsibility. And there's an interesting kind of there are two alternatives there within this global educational reform movement, or GERM, that is very well known in New Zealand too. People often speak about accountability in the together with the standardized testing. So that's why this test-based accountability is a common term in germ-infected school policies and systems. But in Finland, we rather speak about trust-based responsibility. That are very different terms. So in other words, we try to kind of cultivate the culture of trust in teachers and schools, so that they would feel that they are trusted by everybody, the society, and then make sure that the responsibility within the school between the teachers and students and in every classroom would get stronger. So the definition often that I offer from Finland for accountability is that it's something that is left when responsibility is taken away.
It wasn't an issue that came up when I was a teacher many years ago. I felt that parents trusted me to do my job. And I suspect that teachers today feel as though there's a lot of pressure on them to perform to test results, to try and be competitive. Talk to me about what happens when a education system becomes too competitive and less cooperative.
First of all, I think that cooperation and collaboration is the essence of education. And the competition can have many forms there. And I often speak about unhealthy competition in education, because part of the competition is may have a good form and a place in education. But I think that the difficulties emerge when we see education systems competing against one another. That we see now so much because of these international comparisons and tests that are kind of ranking countries according to the performance that comes from the students' test results.
That's not a good thing?
I think competition is not a good thing. I think if the countries think that they have to beat the other countries and be better than the others, no matter the means or ways that gets there, that's not a good thing to do, because then we are kind of playing with children and their lives and learning.
Is that the same with national standards, when we impose a standard and then we compare schools by printing the results?
Well, the national level, when the schools get into the business of competing against one another over enrollment, that's a kind of a dangerous game as well, because then the schools are playing with these individual children. But they are like you could even say that in Finland there is a sort of a competition between schools, but it's a kind of a friendly competition where the stakes are very low, and I think the spirit of the competition is to just try to do a little bit better than differently, not necessarily better, but differently than your neighbor. And that's always a kind of a sign of the friendly rivalry, where people try to, in a way help one another, but still try to get better. But the competition is a kind of a complicated term, because part of the competition is a kind of a driver of renewal, and people will start to do things in a different way. But when the competition gets unhealthy in education, it's the same at the level of individuals. Then people start to do things that are not good for, it's not good for education and not good for individuals.
Talking about equity and fairness, how are schools organised? Is there a zone? Do you go to the school that's nearest to you, or how does it work?
In Finland?
Yes. How do you guarantee that every child gets a fair lick of the spoon?
Yeah, well, we have a school choice in Finland, but it's within the public school system. So since there are no private schools there, and there are no alternative or charter schools, or very few of them, the choice is between one public school and another. And in the larger cities, for example, parents can choose other school that is their neighborhood school. Although the government policy and the local education policies, they're always kind of encouraging parents to have their children in a neighborhood school, but in practice there is this choice.
You see, because in New Zealand, land values have become tied to schools.
Yeah.
Good schools have got expensive land values. How does that work in Finland?
Yeah, Finland, we are still a country where the performance differences statistically between our schools are the smallest in the world. So you can find different schools within the same city, for example, in terms of how they do, but it's a very minor. It's much less than in New Zealand or in the United States or England. So all the parents, I'm one of those, and I know that the nearest school that is in my home, it's always a good school. And so the question more for Finnish parents is that, do I want to have a primary school for my child where he or she can do more sports or music or study different foreign languages, start with French, for example? Or do I want to get my son to the school where everybody else is going and just have a normal program, rather than thinking about whether this is a better school than that one? I think very few parents are really concerned about this betterness of the school that way.
People I can hear at the other end of this camera saying, that's fine for you, you're a pretty homogeneous society. We're a very diverse society. We've got lots of people from the Pacific, we have a large now immigrant population of Asian people, plus Pakeha, New Zealanders. We've got a cocktail of ethnic backgrounds. Right. How is it in Finland?
Well, Finland is changing very fast too, but we are still far away from what many OECD countries, including New Zealand or Australia, are. But we are having a lot of people moving in from other countries without any knowledge or skills of the Finnish language. And the other thing is that many of those who move to Finland, they often move to urban areas. The capital area, for example, is a very common place for people to find their housing or living and then work, and that's why many of those people find their places there. We have an estimate in Helsinki, that is the capital city of Finland, that by year 2020, so it's like 5-6 years from now, about 20% of the students in Helsinki city schools will be immigrant background children. So, and this 20-30 years ago, there was practically nobody there. So we are in a kind of a very rapidly changing situation, and trying to do our best with this.
When I was 5 years old, if somebody had said to me, one day, Bryan, pictures are going to fly through the sky, and they're going to land up on a screen in your living room, or maybe somebody's bedroom, and you're going to be on that screen and you're going to be talking to them, I would have said, come on. We've got no idea, really, what the future is going to hold for our children.
Right.
What kind of skills, what kind of thinking should we be developing in our children to prepare them for a future we have no idea what it will be like?
Yeah, I think this may be a wrong question. That the knowledge and skills, this is how we used to think, that we need knowledge, we need certain skills before we can, cope and deal with this unknown future. Future has been unknown always, but now I think we are just more aware. We are convinced now that we simply don't understand what is waiting for us. But then I think this gets goes closer to the question that what is the purpose of schooling and education? What is the purpose of public schooling that is meant for everybody, all the children? And I think I'm a strong believer of the thing that we should think about schooling now and certainly in the future as a kind of a thing that will help every individual, all the children, to realize what they're good at. In other words, somehow help them to discover their own talent, their own kind of area of passion that they really feel that they want to do, and that they want to improve and do it for other people and do it for themselves. And that's why, when I think about the future of the schooling, I'm not so much thinking about knowledge, content knowledge anymore, what they need to know, and not even skills. I think we all understand what are these basic skills we need to be able to, be together and work together and have certain ethical background, empathy, leadership, teamwork, all these skills. I think that's a kind of everybody agrees that this is a long list of expectations that we have of our kids. But what we don't agree so much is this: that if we had a school system where in New Zealand or in Finland where more young people would leave by saying that thank you very much, school, because you helped me to realize who I am, what I want to do, and now when I go, I want to continue, developing this my own talent with passion for all my life. I think that's a kind of a hopeful thing. I don't think we need people who will leave the school system and say that I have all A's, grades are A, and but I don't know what to do with these things. Maybe I do this or maybe I do that. That's something that your country or mine will not be happy with. But so we need people who are passionate of doing something because of the school.
Thank you. That's a completely different answer to what other people would give. They would say, look, we need to prepare you to work in the economy.
Sure, and there are those who say that we need to focus on these 21st century skills. Some people, by the way, say that the 21st century skills will lead to this type of thing, that this will prepare kids for the 21st century economy. But I think that what I was saying about this, finding your talent and being able to work, work with your element. This is exactly the same thing, and actually it's even more, because those people who do things passionately, they are also much more useful for the economy and for the society when they work like this.
And it's all that resilience stuff about being able to cope with whatever life will throw at you.
Exactly.
Not just the thinking of kind of working out this problem, but this is happening in my life. How do I deal with this?
So many people say that these youngsters who are in a primary school in New Zealand or Finland now, they have to learn 7 or 10 new jobs during their lives. So it's not the question about knowledge and skills anymore. It's more about your ability to, renew yourself, change regularly, do one thing and then, educate, learn something new and then do it. So that's why it's a great question.
You set a very high standard for teachers, don't you? They have to have a master's degree,
That's right.
Okay. And so the process of becoming a teacher is quite rigorous.
It is, yeah. There's a strict control of quality at entry in Finland.
Right. And then do you have programs where teachers can learn new skills, be brought up to date, those sorts of things?
Sure, yeah. The country invests a lot in continuous professional development of teachers all the time. And that's done based on the kind of national priorities, what we think are the important areas of teacher development.
So is there a structure that comes from some ministry or other that oversees all of this? I ask because teacher development is a matter for schools. Some teachers get it, some teachers don't.
Right.
So how does this work in Finland? Is there a kind of an overarching advisory supervision?
No, the most part of this comes with the professional responsibility that our teachers have. And school leaders, I think the role of school leaders in this issue is very, very important. So if you're a school leader, principal in Finland, your responsibility is to make sure that your staff, your faculty, teachers there will have access and resources to professional development. If I'm a school principal in Finland and I have teachers who are not willing to do anything, that's my job is to go to them and say that, how can I help you? What could we do? So that's why it's a kind of a more based on responsibility than control. But I have a comment on this. People often ask about this high level of training of teachers in Finland. That why do we have master's degree, and not only master's degree, but it's a academic research-based degree that is similar to law or medicine or other degrees. And I often say that if you don't have a highly educated teaching force, this community of professionals will not be able to protect themselves from bad ideas from outside. Just like if you think about the medical doctors, because of the strong sense of community that they have as professionals, they are able to protect their profession from kind of a questionable means of cure for any type of disease or sickness that they have. Medical doctors would never accept anything that is not proved by research and tested and experimented, so that they're absolutely confident that this is something that is worth trying. If we don't have well-trained teachers, the teaching profession is equally vulnerable to the kind of external ideas. In New Zealand, you know this very well, but because of this global educational reform movement, idea of competition and accountability and testing and standardization that has kind of entered in New Zealand, and it's partly because of the policies that have been insisting these things, but it's also partly because of the teaching profession has not been given a kind of an opportunity to address these issues in a professional way. And this is the same thing in every country, that often the reason for these germ types of ideas within education system is that the teaching profession has not been able to, or have not had a voice to raise these concerns properly.
The other area too there is that there was this idea abroad in New Zealand that all you have to do is simply pay good teachers more, and that will solve the problem. What do you think?
Yeah, well, again, this is a kind of a global thing, is that in many countries people seem to think that the problem is with teachers, that if only we get the kind of a better young individuals and better teachers paid more, that this will solve the problem. But we know, everybody knows that, for example, the bonus or merit-based pay for teachers is a nonsense. There's no evidence. There's actually evidence that it's going to do harmful, bad things for the whole profession than the good things. So I think people should think this whole thing again and leave a little bit space for this question that this is really all about teachers. Maybe this is because of some other things, and we researchers, we do know that much of this that explains students' learning has nothing to do with the school and very little to do with the teachers. So it's something that is a issue within the society, within the families, the peer social groups and others, and not teachers. So I think it's not kind of a justified way of thinking.
Yes, I asked the question because it seems to me that teachers aren't driven by money, particularly. Money is important to get by, and who would want to pay teachers less and all of that. But there is something in the DNA of teachers which has to do with empathy, with giving, with sharing. And if you have an education system that denies those things, then you've got a problem.
Yeah. Certainly there are people among teachers who do it for money, who are teaching because it's a nice way to make earn what you earn. But most teachers, most of them, everybody that I know who is in the teaching profession is there because of the mission, because they want to do certain things. They want to change people's lives, and that's why I think it's a kind of a violation against this morale of many teachers to say that I give you more money if you raise the test scores of the kids, and it doesn't work like this.
Last question: if you were hired as a consultant to change the New Zealand education system, what would be your key message to our Ministry of Education? I'm a person who takes equity very seriously, and I do know a little bit about the New Zealand school system. So I would probably start this consultancy with the meeting with the wide range of educators and stakeholders in New Zealand to speak about the equity. What does it mean, and what are we doing, and is there something that needs to be done?
I would certainly try to, again, coming from Finland, I would try to enhance the trust in schools and teachers. I have been in New Zealand a couple of times, and I've seen that there's everything is not in order in terms of this kind of a relationship between teachers and the rest of the community. And I think, and I've seen that every country where there is a kind of a conflict or emerging conflict between the teachers and the government or the rest of the society, things are likely to get worse. So I'll try to restore this that used to be a profession that people were trusting, and trying to build consensus rather than conflict. But the equity would be my main, my first thing to really discuss and talk and try to define what we mean by equity, and then see what needs to be done. New Zealand has this long tail of very low performing students. New Zealand is also an interesting country because it has one of the highest proportion of the very high achieving students in the OECD PISA study. And that would be a kind of an interesting thing to ask, that, so what can we do to, even not to take these high achievers away, but help this tail a little bit.